Remember exactly where I was standing when my whole marriage started to unravel. Kitchen. Thursday morning, 7:30. Kids running around like they'd had espresso for breakfast. Backpacks half zipped. Cereal bowls going cold on the counter. Normal chaos. Then the phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, some hotel prefix, with an out-of-state area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. Glad I didn't. Hey, it's me. My wife's voice, Donna. I frowned at the clock. You okay? You just called me last night. I know. She sounded flustered, a little breathless. Listen, my purse got stolen. I need you to cancel the credit cards right now. All of them. I set down my coffee. What? How? I left it on the counter in the lobby gift shop. Just for a second, I was grabbing a magazine, and when I turned back around, it was gone. The girl at the register said she didn't see anything. Donna, you're always so careful. I know, okay? I know. I'm kicking myself. My driver's license was in there too, so I might need a cab for tomorrow's meeting. But my boss Linda already said she'd overnight me a company Amex and wire me some walking around money, so I'll be fine. Just please cancel the cards before somebody runs them up. How much cash was in the wallet? She paused. Maybe 1,200. I whistled low. All right, I'll take care of it. Thank you. How are the boys? Trying to kill each other over the last Pop-Tart. The usual. She laughed, and it sounded warm and real, and I told her I loved her, and she said it back. And I hung up and spent the next 40 minutes on hold with 3 different credit card companies. That was 6 weeks ago. I want to be clear about something before I go any further. My name is Ray Calloway. I'm 53 years old. I've been an HVAC technician for 26 years, residential and light commercial, running my own 2-man operation out of a shop behind our house in Mill Haven, Ohio. Population 12,000. We have a Dairy Queen, a Casey's, a bowling alley that smells like 1987, and everybody knows everybody's business, or thinks they do. Donna and I had been married 11 years. We had 2 sons, Kevin, who was 16, and Danny, who was 15. She worked as a regional sales rep for a printing company out of Columbus, which meant she traveled a lot, 3 or 4 nights a month, sometimes more. Different cities, trade shows, client meetings. I worked from home, set my own schedule, handled the school runs and the dinners and the homework arguments. It worked for us, or so I thought. I'm not going to pretend I was some perfect husband. I worked too much sometimes. I got quiet when I should have talked. But I was faithful. I never once looked at another woman the way I looked at Donna on our wedding day. 11 years, and that hadn't changed. So, 6 weeks after the stolen purse incident, I'm in the home office looking for our homeowner's insurance documents. We'd had some roof damage, and I needed the policy number. And I end up digging through a filing cabinet I don't usually touch. Donna handles all the investment stuff. Her parents died in a car accident about 4 years back, left her a little over $350,000. She put it in a Fidelity account, managed it herself, and I respected that it was hers. I never looked at those statements. But one of them was sitting right there on top of a folder I needed, and I'm only human. I glanced at the balance. Over 400,000. Good for her, honestly. Then I noticed a withdrawal from 6 weeks ago. $3,000 from the money market portion of the account. A check. I sat there for a second. 3 grand is not nothing, but it's not alarming by itself. Donna bought things sometimes without mentioning it. New furniture, stuff for the house, not a big deal. Except the check was made out to Hartley Fine Jewelers, a store I'd driven past 100 times on Route 9. I stared at that line for a long time. She hadn't given me anything from a jewelry store. No birthday was coming up. Her brother Dale lived in Phoenix, and I couldn't imagine what occasion would call for a $3,000 gift to him. I turned it over in my head and couldn't make it fit. So I did something I'm not sure I'm proud of, but I'd do again in a heartbeat. I looked up Hartley Fine Jewelers online, wrote down the number, and called them. A woman answered on the second ring. Pleasant voice, professional. Hartley Jewelers, this is Pam. How can I help you? Hi, Pam. My name is Ray Calloway. My wife made a purchase at your store about 6 weeks ago. A check for $3,000. I'm trying to track down whether there's a warranty on the item, because we may have an issue with it. I heard her typing. Sure, let me pull that up. Callaway, you said? That's right. More typing. Then, okay, I see it. Can you tell me what the issue is with the rings? I felt the floor shift under me. I'm sorry, the rings? The wedding set, the engagement ring, and the band. She paused, picking up something in my voice. Is everything all right? I forced myself to stay level. Can you just walk me through what she purchased? I want to make sure we're talking about the same transaction. Of course. Your wife came in. She was pretty upset, actually. She said her wedding and engagement rings had been stolen, and she wanted to replace them as close to the originals as possible. It was a bit of a process because she was working from memory, but we found something she was happy with. She used a company card as collateral and then sent us a check. Pam's voice softened a little. It's actually a sweet story in a way. She really wanted them to look the same. I bet she did, I said quietly. Is there a problem with the setting? Sometimes the prong, no, Pam, no problem with the setting. I just need to think about some things. I'll call you back. I hung up and sat in that chair for probably 10 minutes without moving. Here's the thing about finding out your wife is cheating on you. It doesn't hit you all at once. It comes in waves, each one a little colder than the last. The first wave was confusion. Why would her rings be in her purse in the first place? She wore them every day. I'd never seen her take them off except to put on hand lotion. The second wave was the obvious answer to that question. She took them off because she didn't want to be seen wearing them. The third wave was everything that followed from that. The hotel, the dancing, and I'd get to that part in a minute. The careful replacement purchase. The fact that she'd told me her purse was stolen in the gift shop while she was grabbing a magazine, but now I was thinking about that story differently. I called the hotel. I asked if they had any record of a theft reported by a guest named Donna Calloway about 6 weeks ago. The woman at the front desk put me on hold, came back, and said yes. They had a written incident report. Can you fax me a copy? She hesitated. That's a little unusual. My wife filed the report. I'm her husband. I just need it for insurance purposes. Another pause, then, give me your number. The fax came through 20 minutes later. I stood at the machine and read it while it was still warm. Donna had written the report herself and signed it. And in her own handwriting, she'd described her purse being stolen while she was dancing in the hotel ballroom. She'd left it at her booth, gone out to the floor, and when she came back, it was gone. She'd noted, and this part she'd underlined, which told me she'd thought about it, that she preferred not to involve the police. She preferred not to involve the police. Because if the police got involved, there'd be a real investigation. Questions. Maybe a look at the hotel's security footage. Maybe someone asking who she was dancing with and why her wedding rings weren't on her finger. I folded that fax and put it in my back pocket. My hands were steady. I was surprised by that. I felt like I should be shaking, but instead, I just felt very, very calm. The kind of calm that comes when you stop hoping you're wrong and start accepting that you're right. She was leaving on another trip in 3 days. I had 3 days to figure out what I was going to do. I want to tell you, I handled those 3 days with dignity and grace. Mostly I did. I cooked dinner. I helped Danny with a history paper. I watched Kevin's JV soccer practice and cheered when he made a good pass. I kissed Donna on the cheek when she came home and asked her about her day, and listened to her answers and gave her nothing. Not a flicker, not a tremor, not a single raised eyebrow. But inside, I was building a case. The night before her trip, she came home in a good mood. Better than usual, actually. That light in her eyes that I used to think was for me. Now I wasn't so sure. We sat down to dinner, pork chops, mashed potatoes, corn, the boys arguing about something on YouTube, and I kept things light. You leave in the morning? I asked. 7:30. She speared a piece of pork. Same old drill. You ever think about going for a desk job? You've been doing this long enough. You know the whole operation. She gave me a look that was half smile, half something else. Not yet. I like being out there. I know you do. I held her gaze for just a beat too long. We miss you when you're gone, though. Me and the boys. Something moved across her face. She looked down at her plate. I know. I miss you guys too. So where is it this time? Denton. She reached over and touched my hand. I'll be back Friday, and I was thinking maybe we do something Saturday. All four of us. Drive up to the lake, maybe. Sounds good, I said. She smiled. Kevin asked to be excused. The moment passed. After dinner, she went to pack, and she asked me to grab her suitcase from the garage. When I went out there, I noticed her briefcase wasn't in the back seat. Had to be in the trunk. I'd expected that. I came back in with the suitcase and set it on the bed, casual as I could manage. Hey, do you know where the car keys ended up? I think I've got a slow leak in the front left. Want to run it over to Gentry's before it gets worse? She looked up from the closet. Tonight? Can't you just put air in it? Slow leak means it'll be flat by morning. Won't take long. She dug through her purse and handed me the keys. I drove her car out of the garage, down 2 blocks to my buddy Walt Gentry's station. Walt and I went to high school together. He owns the place, works it himself most nights with one part-time kid. I pulled into the service bay and Walt came out wiping his hands on a rag. Ray, what's going on? I need about 15 minutes and some privacy, I said. And yeah, check the front left tire while you're at it. Make it look real. Walt studied my face. He's known me 30 years. How bad? Don't know yet. He nodded once. Bay's yours. I got a customer in the waiting room. I popped the trunk. The briefcase was right there. I lifted it out and set it on the workbench. It wasn't locked. Donna never locked it. Said she could never remember the combination. I opened it slowly. Went through it the way you'd go through evidence. Careful, methodical, not moving anything out of place. Work folders, her laptop, a charger, a travel-size bottle of Advil, a folded printout of her itinerary. And in the zippered pocket on the inside of the lid, under a travel pack of tissues and a spare phone cable, an open box of condoms, 3 missing from the row. I stood there with that box in my hand and I thought about 11 years. I thought about the night Kevin was born, how I'd held him and cried like a baby myself. I thought about the camping trip we took 2 summers ago, all 4 of us, and how Donna had laughed so hard at something Danny said that she'd spit her hot chocolate. I thought about the rings I'd saved up for, the ones she'd replaced with a check she hoped I'd never see. I put the box back exactly where I found it, closed the briefcase, put it back in the trunk. Walt came in from the shop. He looked at my face and didn't ask any questions. Tire's fine, he said, didn't need anything. I know. I pulled out my wallet. What do I owe you for the privacy? He waved me off. Go home, Ray. I drove back slowly. It was a warm night, early summer, and the streetlights in Millhaven have this orange glow that I've always liked. I tried to notice it, tried to hold on to something normal. When I pulled into the garage and cut the engine, I sat in the dark for a while before I went inside. The next morning, she left at 7:15. She hugged me at the door, a real hug, both arms, her face against my neck. And I hugged her back because our boys were watching from the kitchen table and because part of me still loved her, and I wasn't sure what to do with that yet. Feel better, she said against my collar. I'd been claiming a stomach thing for a few days as cover for my mood. Working on it, I said. She kissed my cheek and walked to her car and drove away. I watched the garage door come down and then I went inside and poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table and started making calls. The first call was to a private investigation firm I'd found online, Kellerman and Associates, based in Columbus, with a satellite office in Denton. I explained the situation to a guy named Phil Egan, who was professional, matter-of-fact, and didn't make me feel like an idiot for being the last to know. We worked out the details. I gave him Donna's photo, her hotel name, her itinerary. He told me his guys would pick up surveillance once her business day ended Wednesday evening and run it through Thursday night. Photos, written report, everything documented. We'll have it to you by Monday morning, Phil said. What are the odds you actually get something? There was a brief pause. In my experience, Mr. Calloway, when a husband calls me with this much detail already in hand, we get something. The second call was to a divorce attorney named Carol Bischoff, who'd been recommended by my accountant. I got an afternoon appointment. Carol Bischoff was a small woman in her late 40s who had the kind of quiet confidence that made you feel like whatever was happening to you, she'd seen worse and handled it. She walked me through the basics. Ohio's a no-fault state, so the infidelity didn't change the legal grounds. but it was relevant to the custody argument. Given that I was the primary caregiver, had been for years, and that Donna traveled extensively, the odds of me getting primary physical custody of Kevin and Danny were good. Donna would get visitation, probably generous visitation, because she was their mother, and that mattered. The house, I asked. Marital asset, split 50-50, either bought out or sold when you're both ready. Her inheritance? Hers. Separate property, predates the marriage, never commingled. You don't touch it, and she doesn't expect you to. Good, I said. I don't want her money. I want my kids. Carol looked at me over her reading glasses. We'll get your kids, Mr. Calloway. I told her to have the papers ready for Monday, and I asked her to arrange for them to be served at Donna's workplace, her office on Brennan Street, where she'd be back at her desk Tuesday morning at the latest. Carol raised an eyebrow. You want her served at work? I want her served at work. A small pause. Understood. I drove home, picked up the boys from school, made spaghetti for dinner, watched a movie with them, and went to bed at 10 o'clock. I didn't sleep much, but I was steady. Friday afternoon, Donna came home. She seemed quieter than usual, a little careful, like she was watching where she stepped. She brought the boys candy from some gas station on the way back, which she sometimes did, and they were happy about it. I offered to do her laundry. She said no thanks, she'd handle it herself. I smiled and said sure. That night she asked again about my stomach. Still bothering you? She said. We were in bed, lights off, and her voice had that careful quality again. Getting better, I said. My buddy Tom mentioned some supplement he uses. I'm going to try it. You should see Dr. Hale if it doesn't clear up. I will. She was quiet for a moment, then, I love you, Ray. I stared at the ceiling. I know you do, I said. It wasn't a lie exactly. I think she did love me in whatever way she was capable of. I just wasn't enough of something. I never figured out what. Monday morning, 8:45. Boys were at school. Donna was at work. I drove to the Kellerman and Associates office on 5th Street and sat down with the office manager, a heavy-set guy named Dennis, who had kind eyes and the practiced neutral expression of someone who delivered bad news for a living. Report came in from Denton this morning, Dennis said. He slid a manila folder across the desk, faxed over with the photos. I'll be honest with you, I skimmed it. It's not good. I know, I said. That's why I hired you. I opened the folder. The report was thorough. Surveillance began at 5:17 p.m. on Wednesday, June 16th, in the lobby of the Denton Marriott. Subject identified by photo comparison and confirmed by name badge. She was carrying her briefcase. A hotel staff member accompanied her to the 4th floor. Room 414. She was alone at that time. Photo 1A showed her in professional attire, walking toward the elevator. Clear shot. Rings on her left hand. By 6:32 p.m., she was back in the lobby. Photo 1B, black cocktail dress, high heels, the anniversary necklace I'd given her, the one with the small sapphire pendant, because sapphire was her birthstone. She looked beautiful. She always looked beautiful. Her left hand was bare. The report tracked her through the hotel bar, where she met a man. Tall, mid-40s, dark hair going gray at the temples. They had drinks. They moved to a booth. Photo 1D showed them in that booth, and I'm not going to describe it in detail except to say that it was not ambiguous. At 8:51 p.m., they left the restaurant together and went upstairs. Photo 1E showed them entering room 414. He left at 11:13 p.m. The report noted his license plate. His name was Gregory Aldrich. Address in Denton. Married. 2 kids. The following night, according to the report, there was a different man. I sat with that for a long time. Dennis was quiet. He'd seen this before. He knew there was nothing useful to say. I asked for 2 additional copies of everything, including the photos burned to a CD. I paid the balance of what I owed, shook Dennis's hand, and walked out into the parking lot where the morning sun was doing its best to pretend it was a normal day. I sat in my truck and called Carol Bischoff. The report's in hand, I said. File the papers, and make sure they're served tomorrow. Done, she said. Ray, are you okay? I'm getting there, I said. I went home. I worked in the shop for a few hours, had a residential unit to service out on Garfield Road, and I did it right, because that's what you do. You keep moving. That night at dinner, Donna was quiet. She kept glancing at me with those careful eyes. She'd started doing that more, like she was trying to read something in my face and couldn't quite make it out. You seem far away, she said after the boys had gone upstairs. Just tired, I said. Long day. She nodded slowly. We watched TV for a while and didn't say much. When we went to bed, she moved close to me and I let her, because I didn't know how to not let her yet. But I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe and thinking about Gregory Aldrich getting in his car at 11:13 p.m. and driving home to his wife and kids, and I felt something harden in my chest that I don't think ever fully softened again. Tuesday morning, I was up at 6, made breakfast, got the boys off to school, kissed Donna on the cheek when she left for work at 8:15, watched her back out of the driveway. At 10:45, my phone rang, her work number. I answered and didn't say anything. There was a long pause. Then Donna's voice, barely above a whisper. Ray. Another pause. I'm so sorry. I didn't answer. There wasn't anything to say to that. After a moment, I heard her start to cry, and then the line went quiet, and I set the phone down on the counter and stood there in my kitchen in Millhaven, Ohio, and let the silence do what it needed to do. She didn't come home that night. I didn't know where she went, and I didn't call to ask. The boys wanted to know where Mom was, and I told them she had some things to sort out, and she'd be in touch soon. Kevin looked at me with those 16-year-old eyes that miss nothing, and I could see him working it out, and I felt a grief for him that was separate from everything else, bigger in some ways. Is everything okay, Dad? He asked. It's going to be, I said. I promise you that. The next morning, she called again. Ray, can I come get some things? Can we talk? I thought about how I wanted to handle this. I'd had time to think. Come between 9 and noon, I said. The boys and I won't be here. Take what you need. But if you want to talk, actually talk. That happens in Carol Bischoff's office after you've signed the papers. Not before. A long silence. Son, that's really how you want to do this? That's how I'm doing this. I heard her breath catch. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. She signed the divorce papers. The divorce was finalized 6 months later, and I got primary custody of Kevin and Danny, with Donna getting generous visitation. Every other weekend, 2 weeks in the summer, holidays alternating. It was fair. She was their mother and she loved them, and whatever she'd done to me, I wasn't going to use our boys as weapons. We did have that conversation in Carol's office. Donna sat across from me looking like she hadn't slept in weeks, which she probably hadn't. She asked me to reconsider. She talked about the kids, about how hard the limited access was going to be, about how much she loved me and how she knew that meant nothing now. But she needed me to know it anyway. I listened to all of it. Then she told me she'd been seeing a therapist who had diagnosed her with a compulsive behavior disorder. She used a clinical term. I'm not going to repeat here because I'm not a doctor and I don't want to get it wrong. She said she'd been struggling with it for years and hadn't known how to talk about it, hadn't known what it even was. I looked at her for a long time before I answered. Donna, I said carefully, I'm sorry you were dealing with something you didn't understand. I mean that. But here's the thing. You had 11 years to say something. 11 years to tell me something was wrong, that you needed help, that we needed to figure something out together. You didn't do that. You just went to Denton and took your rings off. She started to cry. I hope the therapy helps you, I said. I genuinely do. But I'm not the person who can be there while it does. Carol walked us out separately. That was the last real conversation Donna and I had. I heard things after. Millhaven is a small town. A buddy of mine named Scott Pruitt, who does some weekend work at a bar over in Garfield Heights, mentioned he'd seen Donna there a few times. Different guys each time. I don't know if the therapy took or not. I hope it did. Partly for her sake, but mostly because of Kevin and Danny. They need their mother to be okay. A friend of Donna's called me about 8 months after the divorce and told me Donna wasn't doing well. Said she'd gotten sick. The implication was clear enough. I felt bad about that. I really did. But I also couldn't be what she needed, and pretending otherwise wouldn't have helped either of us. I focused on the boys. That was the job. Kevin turned 17 and started talking about wanting to study mechanical engineering, which honestly made me prouder than I have words for. Danny made the junior varsity basketball team and started dating a girl from his history class who seems genuinely nice. We ate dinner together most nights. We watched a lot of bad TV. We were okay. About 4 months after the divorce was final, my neighbor across the street, a woman named Barbara Holt, retired teacher, sharp as a tack, came over to return a casserole dish she'd borrowed and ended up staying for coffee. We'd always gotten along. She knew what had happened in the broad strokes. "My daughter's been after me to try this dating thing," Barbara said, wrapping her hands around her mug. "Some app. I can't remember the name of it. Something about values." Values? That's the thing she keeps saying. She says it's not like the other ones. You don't just look at pictures and swipe. You answer all these questions first. About what you believe in, what you've been through, what you actually want from your life. The computer figures out who matches you on the inside before you ever see a photo. Barbara shook her head with a small smile. I told her I'm 62 years old, and I don't need a computer to tell me who I'm compatible with. She told me that's exactly what someone who needs help would say. I laughed. First real laugh in a while. What's it called? Singletune. Singletune.com, I think she said. I didn't do anything with that right away, but I thought about it sometimes, late at night after the boys were in bed and the house was quiet in that particular way that houses get when they used to be fuller than they are now. I'd think about what Barbara had said, questions about what you've been through and what you want from your life. There was something in that felt different from the usual noise. Not just who's available and who's nearby, but who actually sees things the way you do. Who's been knocked around by life the same way you have and come out the other side still standing. I'd been knocked around. I was still standing. I figured that counted for something. It was about 2 months after that when I finally made an account on singletune.com. I want to be clear that I didn't do it with any great expectations. I did it on a Wednesday night after Danny had gone to his room to do homework, and Kevin was at a friend's house, and I sat at the kitchen table with my reading glasses on and answered what felt like about 100 questions. Some of them were the kind you'd expect. What are your deal breakers? What does a good relationship look like to you? But some of them were different. Questions about how you handled failure, what you'd learned from the hardest thing you'd ever been through, what you believed people owed each other. I found myself actually thinking about the answers instead of just clicking through to get to the profile part. The profile part came eventually, but by then I felt like I'd already said something real. I matched with a woman named Patrice Dunbar. 51 years old, lived about 40 minutes south of Millhaven in a town called Elford. She worked as a high school art teacher, divorced for 3 years. Her profile said she liked hiking and bad science fiction movies and making her own pasta from scratch, and that she was looking for someone who'd been honest about who they were in the questionnaire because she'd had enough of people who weren't. We messaged for a week, then we talked on the phone for 2 hours one Sunday afternoon while I was sitting on the back porch watching the birds at the feeder Donna had put up years ago that I'd never taken down. On our third phone call, Patrice said something I've thought about a lot since. I almost didn't try it, she said. Singletune. My friend kept pushing me and I kept saying I wasn't ready. And then one night, I just sat down and answered the questions. And somewhere in the middle of it, I realized this is the first time I've been asked to describe who I actually am, instead of just what I look like or what I do for work. And I thought, if someone matches with me based on this, at least I'll know they're matching with the real version. That's exactly it, I said. That's exactly what it felt like. We met for coffee on a Saturday morning at a place in Elford called Rosie's. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a mug and a book. She sat face down when I walked in. She had dark hair going silver at the temples, and laugh lines, and the kind of direct, steady gaze that tells you a person has been through something and decided to be okay anyway. We talked for 3 hours. We missed the lunch rush entirely, and the staff started giving us looks, and we didn't care. I told her about Donna. She told me about her ex-husband, a man named Dale Whitfield, who'd turned out to be living a whole separate life that Patrice had known nothing about. She said it the way you say things when you've processed them enough That they're facts instead of wounds. Did you see it coming? I asked. In retrospect, I saw all of it, she said. In the moment, I saw none of it. You know how that goes? I do, I said. She picked up her coffee. What did you do when you found out? I built a case, I said, quietly, methodically, and then I served her the papers at her office. Patrice looked at me for a moment and then smiled. Not a big smile, just the corners of her mouth turning up in a way that said she understood exactly why I'd done it that way. Good, she said. That was 8 months ago. Patrice has met Kevin and Danny twice now. The first time was accidental. She stopped by to drop something off and both boys were home, and it was awkward for about 4 minutes. And then Danny started asking her about art because he has a class he's struggling with, and Kevin offered her a soda. And by the time she left an hour later, both of them were relaxed around her in a way I hadn't expected. Kevin told me afterward, in that careful way he has, "She seems real, Dad." That's the highest compliment my son gives. She seems real. I think he's right. I think after everything, the stolen purse, the rings, the hotel in Denton, the briefcase in Walt's service bay, the fax with Donna's own handwriting on it, all of it. What I was looking for on the other side was just something real. Someone who'd been through the fire and come out honest. Someone who answered the hard questions straight. I found that. I'm not going to rush what comes next, but I'm not afraid of it either. That's more than I could have said 2 years ago.